It is a pleasure to welcome Chad Eckert. He of, Fantasy Golf, Preferred Lines Podcast. We're going to talk a little DFS golf with the Heritage getting underway tomorrow in Hilton Head. Follow Chad on Twitter at Fantasy Golf Pod, P-O-D. Chad, welcome to the show. Thanks for your time. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We get a chance to talk gambling at 7:30 in the morning, Chad. I mean, this is right up our alley.
Well, and that's my big thing, Chad, because look, we are two degenerate gamblers. Most of our audience is in that same, and we mean that very affectionately.
Yes.
But we bet football. We don't do a lot of golf betting. So when there has been one tournament, there was a huge hiatus. How are you trying to handicap these tournaments?
Oh, it's difficult. It's like navigating in the dark a little bit, because a lot of the things you look at is recent form, and that's very much gold in our industry, and there really isn't any recent form. You just kind of have to guess, which is great for people that are getting into it, because we don't have an advantage, us cappers. So you're just as much of a capper yourself, so go for it. Dive right in. You got money in your account, let's spend it.
Oh, we will. We will. Don't worry about that.
I was going to say, Mark just found $90 in his account during the commercial break.
Yeah,
this
is
the wife
great.
Going through her purse, found money at the bottom of it. He's so excited.
But, Chad, one of the things I read last week going into the Colonial was basically in the first part of this golf year, there was only, I believe, one win out of a guy that was favored in the top three yet this year. Most of the winners were coming in that 30-1, 50-1 range. So how do you apply that to DraftKings when you're trying to pick five guys?
Well, hey, on the Fantasy Golf Pod, my co-host loves taking the top-priced guy, which this week's Rory McIlroy, $11,300. I fade that top-priced guy. I always go with the lesser expensive player, so I don't have to fit a random $6,000 guy as my last player in. I like to do more of a balanced build approach. This week, at the top, you have JT right underneath Rory. We get a little savings there, 10-9. That's a $400 savings. Or you can go all the way down to my favorite player at the top range is Jon Rahm, $10,500. Everybody thinks, well, he missed the cut last week. Something's wrong with Jon Rahm. No, he just was a little rusty. He said in his press conference last week he hadn't played golf that much. Rahm's a class player, and you can get him for a discount, 10-5. I got Rahm.
Chad, I must admit, while I don't bet a lot of golf, I do like to bet the head-to-head matchups. I feel as if you have a better chance on a daily basis going head-to-head. Some of the matchups that you like heading into rounds 1 and 2.
Okay, so on a head-to-head basis, some of these books won't offer everyone versus anybody, so you kind of have to decide based on what they're offering, what you like. I typically look at who I don't like and look to see who I can exploit for someone I don't like. So, for example, if I'm really off of a guy and he's up against two other guys that I'm okay about, then I'll go maybe look at the guys that are up against this guy I don't like. Golf is super variant too, so look at the guys that have a plus number. Don't bet a favorite in a group of three. Golf is crazy. Anything can happen. One shot here or there can affect someone's round. Let's go with a guy that's an underdog, and let's make some money instead of betting on a negative 110. Go with some plus EV. But, okay, you want names? You got Brian Harmon is a guy I like, a top 10 bet you could do. Sergio Garcia, another guy that's kind of got down on the board, low in price. But my favorite play, honestly, of the week is Kevin Kisner. You can get him at a top 10 bet, almost 5-1. I love him as even an outright. He started at 66-1, and now he's down to 50 because everybody's on him. He loves Pete Dye courses. He's from the area. Kevin Kisner played well last week, however, didn't putt well, and that's what he's typically known to do, is putt well, and he's going back to his home course-ish on a green and grass he likes. So I like Kevin Kisner.
A lot of people like DJ this week. He plays Pete Dye course as well. He did not play well last week, obviously, and didn't look like he was that interested in playing. In fact, said what was his comment in an interview? What have you been doing? Not a damn thing. So, here's a guy who plays this course well, but kind of said in interviews, I've not been playing a lot of golf. How do you look at DJ this week?
That is DJ. That's his MO. And, okay, DraftKings has this milli maker. You could become a millionaire playing DraftKings golf. But what they do is they put these contests out, and then they put the prices out, and nobody can make the right team, right? So this week they softened the heck out of the prices. They dropped Dustin Johnson from $9,500 last week. He's $8,500. The roster spot is $8,300. So you can get Dustin Johnson for $200 more than just a roster spot. I think Dustin Johnson's a great play, great value at $8,500. He could pop at any moment. Like you said, Pete Dye guy. He went to a coastal Carolina school for college. I don't know if he actually went to school, but he went there.
Chad Eckert, Fantasy Golf Preferred Lines Podcast. Follow him on Twitter, Fantasy Golf Pod. It seems obvious, or is it overanalyzing on my part, guys who played last week versus guys who didn't play last week who are in the field this week? Don't you play some of the guys who have 36 or 72 holes under their belt?
You know, I talked to my co-host last night about this exact topic and whether or not you take the guy that's been in the heat in Texas and played in contention on Sunday last week, or you get the guy that got home, rested up, ate up all his favorite meals, and then practiced on the range what he needed to practice. I don't know. I mean, like, we've never had this 3-month layoff thing, so I'm leaning towards the guys that are rested versus the guys that have been in the heat and played. That's why I picked Rahm there. I don't know. I mean, Hideki sat out last week. He's here. But, you know, you got guys like Gary Woodland who hit the ball super well last week and then just struggled with their putters on Sunday. Justin Thomas, the same thing. So you kind of have to decide, are they motivated? Now, Colin Morikawa and Xander Schauffele, they were right in it, and then they missed short putts, so mentally they could be fatigued. I'm not sure.
And Morikawa was just so good, it's hard to not pick him every week. All right, give our listeners, because again, I know they do DraftKings for football. Most of our listeners get the concept. What do you think from a value standpoint? If someone's doing DFS golf for the first time, what type of games do you think they should be playing? How should they spend their, $50, $100, $10 on DraftKings so that they're not just giving money away?
Exactly. So if you go to our Twitter page at Fantasy Golf Pod, pinned tweet there is a strategy pod, 20 minutes long. Very, very helpful. Now, basic stuff here. Look for historically good players that are in the $7,000 range. This week, it is chock full of those names. Right there, you got Billy Horschel, $7,700, Florida guy. Bermuda Grass this week, I like him. Jason Day, $7,600. Brant Snedeker, $7,500. Bubba Watson, $7,400. I mean, these are names you all have known and heard of, and they're good, and they're in the $7,000 range. You can fill your roster with anybody else. I like those names.
How much is Kuchar? He didn't play last week. This is not far from where he lives in Sea Island there. How much is Kuchar?
They did it to Kuchar, too. They wanted you to pick him. He's $8,300. He is a Pete Dye specialist, and this is his favorite course. He does so well here all the time. Matt Kuchar, $8,300. That guy right into your lineup for sure.
What is the beer that you crack at the beginning of the podcast? And I want to say congratulations on having that sort of style. We do live radio. I'm not allowed to drink beer, but when we did a full-on Twitch show for the NFL Draft, by the end of the first round, I was hooked on phonics. So I like your style with this. So what is the go-to for a beer for the Fantasy Golf Pod?
Listen, I'm cracking beers and clicking names up here in Minnesota. We got a couple local breweries. I got Summit Brewery and I got Surly Brewery. So I'm into those two brands. My favorite Surly is an IPA called Furious. So that's kind of fun. Wow.
Furious Surly. That sounds like a good title for a pod.
It really does.
Chad, really appreciate it. Like the insight.
Absolutely.
Want to do it again. A lot of fun. Really, really like what you brought to the show. Fantasy Golf Pod is where you follow him on Twitter. And like he said, you can download the pod that's pinned to the top of the Twitter page for advice and strategy on how to do DFS for golf. We'll do this again, Chad. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, boys. See you later.
Chad Eckert, kind enough to join us. Fantasy Golf Pod is how you follow him on Twitter. Seth Everett will join us next hour for his regular weekly appearance.
Cracking beers and clicking names.
Well,
that's a lot of energy for 6:30 in the morning, David.
That's right.
That's a lot of energy for 6:30 in the morning.
That was a 6:28 a.m. spot for Chad. We are very thankful and grateful to him for getting up early and doing that for us.
When David and I are side by side, Jiro back at the studio calls all the guests and set that up. It's a lot easier for me. But when we're in different locations, due to our equipment, we can't do it that way. It just would make echoes and it doesn't sound proper. So I have to make the calls. And I always do it about a minute and a half before we go on air. His phone call went right to voicemail. And it never rang. And all of a sudden I hear, "Are you satisfied with your message?" I'm like, I didn't even hear the voicemail. And he called back right away and was just, "Hey man, sorry, went to ignore. I'm sorry, I'm ready, let's do this." And I mean, was just fired up at 6:30 in the morning. And I thought some sound advice there.
And I am not a Matt Kuchar guy, but I would play him in DFS this week.
I'd play Patrick Reed this week.
You know, I have a sore spot with you this year about Patrick Reed. We put a team together this year, and I wanted Patrick Reed.
I know.
Right? And you went with Finau over Reed, which I understood on paper made sense. But I told you Patrick Reed was going to have a monster bounce back year this year. And I think he will.
Can't root for him.
No, I didn't say, once again,
but
I'm not a Kuchar guy. I'd play him this week. I don't like Patrick Reed. I wanted him on our team.
I know. And if we lose because of that, you can take me to task. I'll just although because this season got so screwed up, the guy that runs the league basically threw 30% of the money towards just the Masters pool that you get in for free because everything got so disjointed. So we've got basically a free bet since we've already paid for this